Hello and welcome everybody to a new Photoshop tutorial. I'm Andrei. Today I want to show you how I made this photo manipulation in Photoshop. Now this is not a really difficult manipulation. What I tried to do is just combine very few images and give it a sort of a fantasy or romantic touch to it and really make it look more awesome just by using light effects and the moon and all those sort of things that I like to add on my manipulation. So I would say this is an intermediate manipulation in terms of difficulty. So if you're a premium member watching this from YouTube, you will find the resources that I used for this on the description of the video. And if you're watching this as a premium member from my website, you will find it. You'll find those resources and the PSD file underneath the video there on the article. Now, just to make things clear, being a premium member on YouTube does not give you access to my website or vice versa. So if you are a premium member on YouTube, you will have all the resources and all the tutorials and everything on the community tab on my channel. And if you're on my website, you will find everything on the premium section. You will find it on the menu. So download the stock folder and the PSD file, and let's get started. Now, just to mention it, I'm using Photoshop CC 2019, but you can use any CC version of Photoshop. And if you're an advanced user, you can even use Photoshop CS6, and I've even heard people making this in Affinity Photo. So if you're an experienced user, you will be able to do this in other software as well, because they pretty much work the same. So let's get started. I have the PSD file. You will see that it's grouped. The whole manipulation is grouped. And the reason why I did that is just a quick tip before we start, is because this is a pretty high resolution, I think, yeah, 5000 by 3000. And so when you start to add effects and all that kind of stuff and filters and smart objects, your computer can run a little slow. So after I finished the manipulation and then I wanted to make the post-production, I grouped everything and then I deactivated that group. That way Photoshop does not render that group, the contents of that group, and I can only have a screenshot here with all the adjustments and the final effects. Okay, so let's get started. Let's go to our stock folder, and here is the stock folder, and we're gonna start by opening this image. Now I got all these images from pexels.com. If you've been following me and my tutorials, you know that I use this website a lot. And since I'm making the tutorial, I'm gonna make this image a little smaller because you can see it's pretty big. So I'm gonna make it just 3000 pixels wide because I'm also recording the video and it's gonna do just fine for this tutorial. Now, we have to remove this background, and that's really easy. I'm going to use the quick selection tool because the edges on this roof are pretty well defined, so I can safely just paint over it. Actually, let's just paint over the roof itself, not over the background. Now I want to exclude this part from over here, so I'm going to just press and hold the Alt key or Option on a Mac and just refine this. Of course, you can use the refine edge if you want to, and in fact I will. I said that we're gonna fix this in just a second. Now first, let's create the layer mask to get rid of the background. And just before we continue, let me just grab the clone stamp tool because I want to cover this part over here because it's not looking nice here. And on top of that, we're gonna have the bottom part of the image very dark, and this is gonna stick out too much and it's not nice. So I'm gonna sample from here and just paint over here, make sure my brush is to 100%, and I'm painting with the clone stamp destructively. I don't really care too much about the details here on the bottom. And now I'm going to right click on the mask and choose select and mask because I want to just shift the edge a little bit, increase the feather and the contrast. I'm doing this, I'm not even zooming it at 100%, but I just want to make the edges a bit sharper. Now let's name this BG, or actually foreground. because this will be our foreground. And let's open another image now. I'm gonna open this image over here. I'm gonna use this one for the sky only, but you can, if you want, just use it as the whole background. But I just wanted to have something else on the background. This doesn't look bad, but I wanted to have something else for the background. So I'm gonna make it bigger, just to hide the mountains. Put it there. And on top, I like this glow over here. I think it looks nice. And let's go to File, Place Embedded. And I used this other image for the horizon, for the mountains. I liked it, and I used this one. So I'm going to place it over there. And with a quick selection tool, I'm going to select the sky. And I'm not even going to zoom in and just refine this. I'm just going to leave it like that. And I'm going to fill this with black. Oops. Just make sure you get rid of that. You can even blur the whole background just a little bit, a couple of pixels, 2, 3, 4 pixels, depending on your canvas size. And that way you have the house, well, this rooftop and the girl a little more in focus, but you will lose the details on the stars. So I'm not going to blur it because I will show you how to populate this with some more stars using a filter a bit later on. So let's name this mountains. And this one will be our sky. The next thing I want to do is here on the mountains, I want to use a levels adjustment. Let me just use curves because I like it better. Since this is a smart object, this will be a smart filter, and I just want to darken that a little bit, just increase the contrast to make it fit a little more my sky there, and click OK. The next thing I want to do is integrate my foreground into that background. So I'm going to turn this into a smart object as well. And I will use curves because the first thing I want to do is darken the whole thing a bit. Actually, quite a lot, like so. And then I want to go into the channels because I want to add more blue on the house. You can use other techniques. You can use a photo filter, or you can use layer styles to add a color overlay with maybe the soft light blend mode. But I like to use this curves because I can do it from here just by pushing this up a little bit. You can add more blue, and maybe on the reds to add more cyan, like so. And that looks a lot better than before. Let me go back to the RGB just to see if I can pump up the contrast just a little bit. Let's not raise it too much. I think this is okay. And you can see what I did here. Let me see if I can show the before and after preview, the before and after. Now, maybe I made the whole thing too dark. We'll see. Now what I want to do is add a color lookup, even though it's not really that necessary, but I will. I'm going to add a color lookup, and I'm going to use you can use the moonlight, or you can use the day to night. Let me see where it is. Right here, night from day. But you can see this darkens the whole thing way too much. So I'm going to just increase the opacity to about 20%. It really depends on how much you darken things with the adjustments before you added this adjustment. One thing I can do is go back to curves and probably make the house just a little brighter so that it stands out a little more. Because actually this is the focus point on our manipulation, more or less. And click OK. Now, one other thing that I did is I added on the mountains, on this layer, I added some outer glow because I wanted to have some light over there on the background. So just increase the size a lot. I'm using white with the overlay blend mode, and the range I'm gonna increase it to 100% and something like that. If it's too bright, you can just darken this color. You can use a light gray and click OK. Also, I think I also painted the glow myself with the brush, but also what I can do is try and raise the sky a little bit so that the bright part is right over there. Okay, now we have the background. I think it looks pretty good. One other thing you can do if you want, lately I starting to do this more and more, is once I'm done with the background, I merge everything onto a new layer, and I name it background final, BG final, and then I use camera raw. I usually turn this into a smart object and go to camera raw, and just in this case I'm gonna add some vignetting with a low midpoint and increase the feather to the maximum, and of course it's too strong, something like that. And from here I can just tweak the colors I want for my image. And probably increase some clarity. I think it's too green, so let's not saturate that too much. And click OK. That is just something that I like to do, but you don't have to do it. I think it's looking too dark, maybe. Oh, I just had my screen brightness down. So now the next thing we want to do is add the girl over there. Now, and because I'm a good guy and you're awesome supporting my channel, I'm going to give you the model already extracted from the background. This is the model. This is the original image. You can open this PNG file and just place it on your image. Let's drag this here and close this image. I'm going to turn this into a smart object just because I want to make her smaller, and I don't want to lose the editing capabilities, so I'm gonna place her right over there. Now, the way you place this is just look here at her knee. Okay, so you just want to have the roof here passing through her joint here to her knee. Okay, so probably about there. That way it's gonna look like she's holding, well, her feet over there, but we have to make her smaller because she's way too big for this rooftop. About that size, it's okay, I think. More or less over there. We have to create a layer mask. Let's name this layer girl, because we have to get rid of her other leg. So we'll get the brush tool, select the mask, opacity and flow 100% on the brush, and let me start my toolbox because I want to be able to switch things faster. Okay, let's adjust the brush in the meantime, make the hardness to 100%, and oh yeah, that's a lot better, and just start painting her other leg out. Like so. And this part here, we're going to darken it, and that's pretty much it. Now, the next thing we want to do is I want to make sure that I don't have this white line along her body. So what you can do is you can use the layer mask, but the layer mask that I created is just this. It's simply this. So maybe you want to do another technique, which is manually painting this pixel out. The fastest way to do it is control click the girl so that you select the edges, and then go to select, modify, contract, and you can choose 1.5 pixels or something like that. I don't know if I can use decimals here. No, I have to use 1 pixel. Okay, now you can see that I shrinked the selection by 1 pixel, and now I can invert this selection, because now if I paint on the layer mask, I just paint the inner part of her body. So I want to invert this. You can go to select inverse, or press Shift Command I or Shift Control I if you're on Windows, and you can start painting. Now, this marching ends is bothering me, so I'm going to press Command H or Control H to hide it, and I'm going to make the brush smaller, and now I can safely paint and see what I'm actually doing, which is removing that 1 pixel line from her body. You can safely paint without worrying about the edges or anything, and you can see how easy it is. The next thing we want to do is make some shadows and fix the hair. So let's create a new layer underneath the girl and name it Girl Shadow. And I'm going to use the soft brush, probably 20%. I could do it with the toolbox, but I want you to see the values. So about 20%, and opacity 30 and flow maybe 50 on the brush, and paint with black, of course. Start painting some shadows. Now it's gonna look a little weird right now because we still have to paint some more shadows. The next one is on top of the girl. Create a new layer and clip it to the girl by pressing Alt and clicking between the two layers. And let's name it Top Shadow, because this is a shadow that we're gonna paint on herself, on her body. So, oops, that was too strong. Still want to see the details. You don't want to make something like that, really that too dark like that. You still want to have some details there, see the details and the shapes, but just darken things. The closer you are to the roof, the darker it should be, and then you gradually paint less and less and fade it out. So here we have more shadow. We're gonna leave it like that for now, and I'm gonna move on and make the moon, and then we can continue making the shadows and the lights. So what I will do is go underneath the girl actually and create a new layer underneath the girl above the background, and I'm gonna name it Moon. And I made this by hand. You can use a real moon if you want. Just go to pexels.com or unsplash.com and just find a moon there, a full moon, a half moon, or whatever you want. But in this case I made it manually. I simply just got the elliptical marquee tool and press the Option and the Shift key so that I can create a perfect circle like this. And let me just set this to normal. And I think I'm gonna put it right over there. Well, I think it's too big. Let me just do it again. So about that big, I think it's gonna be better. And I'm gonna fill this with let's say with yellow, something like this. In the end it's not gonna be yellow, it's gonna be almost white, but anyways. And now what you can do is just move this selection a little, like so. Depend on how thin you want the moon to be, but I think something like that will look just fine. And just press delete. Let me see how I made the original, more or less. Well, kind of looks good to me, I think. Maybe too big. Let me just make it slightly smaller. Like that, and put it right over there. Now, the next thing we want to do is start adding effects to this moon. So let's go into the layer styles. And I don't remember the effects that I used actually, but more or less I had an outer glow, and I actually created two kinds of glows. The first one is like a big glow, this one with the overlay blend mode. Let me set the white color. This will make a almost invisible, but definitely adds an effect. And then a drop shadow. The drop shadow is to create the close glow, and I will use, let me see if I can find the color that I like. Definitely I used the screen blend mode, and something like this. Actually should be almost white, so don't saturate this too much, and also don't make it too obvious. Do not create something like this, okay? just use something really subtle, but a little more visible than the one that we created with the outer glow. Okay, so have something like this. Next, I added also an inner shadow, or you can actually use inner glow. It's like the same almost. And I will increase the size of this because this is going to turn my moon into almost white, and I will use a white, almost white color, and I'm going to use the screen blend mode. Okay, now the moon itself, it's too yellow, I think, so I'm gonna have to probably use the color overlay as well. Yeah, and use something like that, and the inner glow, something a bit more saturated like that, and the outer glow, oops, highlight, I don't like it. Maybe I should use screen. Yeah, that looks better because I have more control, and yeah, I think something like that will work. And let me go back to the inner glow. So you can see it's just back and forth, looking for the effect that you want. And I think that's pretty much it. You can add more drop shadows if you want to have even more glow, and I don't know, just stack up glows, but don't overdo it because we can paint this glow manually, and we can actually add more glow in camera raw when we're done with the whole things here. So that's how I created the moon. And the next thing I want to show you is how I added more stars. I used a filter for that, so I will create a new layer underneath the moon and above the background, and let's name this stars. And I went to filter, noise, and add the noise. Yeah, it's empty. First I have to fill it with black. So fill the layer with black, go to filter, noise, add noise, and you can use an amount of 100%, Gaussian, and monochromatic, and click OK. Now I will go to filter and choose filter gallery. And from here you can see the filter it already shows up. Let me just close this. This is the filter that I used. It's called Sponge, and you will find it inside the artistic group. Here you can see the sponge right here, and what it does, it just reduces the amount of detail that you have on your image, and it creates this kind of stars effect. And the effect is controlled by these sliders. You can use the same values that I have here. They will work for you, and you can see that if you change them, you can start to have more stars or less, and with the definition and the smoothness you can change the amount of detail that you have. So I will just leave these values and click OK. And now I'm going to change the blend mode of this to you can use screen. That way they will the black bits will go away. Of course we only need the stars over the sky. Luckily we have the mountains over here, so we can use this layer mask on the mountains. So I'm going to control click on the layer mask of the mountains. This will select everything, while the edges of the mountains. And now I'm going to go to the stars, select that layer, and click the layer mask icon. And now I have to invert it because it just made disappear the top part. So Command I, it's going to invert that, and here we have our stars. Now they will not look exactly like the ones that you have on the background, but they look good enough. What you can do if you want to have them smaller is unlink the layer mask, select the layer, press Ctrl Command T, and make the whole layer smaller. Duplicate that layer and move it to the side, and now I have smaller stars. And when you're happy with that, you can select both layers and turn them into a smart object, or just merge them with Control A or Command A and go back to screen blend mode. And that's how I created more stars. Next is making the light effects and the fireflies, and we're almost done. So let's start with the fireflies, and then we can create the light effects. I will create a new layer on top of everything right over here. And the first thing we want to do is create a custom brush. Actually, you can use the same technique that we used with the stars, but I think it's easier to just create a custom brush and then paint those fireflies wherever we want. So let me first get my opacity to 100% in the flow as well. Make sure the blend is set to normal, the opacity to 100%, and I will choose this greenish tone just so that I can distinguish what I'm painting here. And now I'm going to open the brush settings. You can open this panel from Window, Brush Settings, or pressing F5. And here I'm going to deactivate the transfer, and I'm going to increase the hardness to 100%. I'm going to increase the spacing a little bit, and I'm going to activate the dual brush. The reason why I do this is because you can change the edges of the brush. Instead of having it round, you can create something more random. And you can choose any brush that you have here, and then increase the size. And you'll start to see how this looks like. Just play with this sliders here on the bottom. The color burn works well. Also the multiply works great, and probably the scale is too. You can see how it's kind of destroying my own brush here, which I think it looks nice. And once you have something like that, go back to the brush tip shape and decrease the size, and probably increase the spacing a lot more. I will click OK, and I'm also gonna squeeze the thing here. Oh, I also forgot to change the angles and stuff. So on the shape dynamics, you can change the angle. And what else we can change from here? We can change the scattering a bit. This dual brush is not actually working how I expected, maybe because I have too much size or too much spacing. Yeah. So just play with the settings. If you end up with something that you don't like or it's difficult, just use a normal round brush and that's it. And what I will do now is zoom to 100% and just start painting. Actually, for some reason the angle is not changing, and I think that's because I changed the size jitter, not the angle jitter. Okay. And just start painting like that. A few points here and there. You don't have to make them too big. Just a few ones. Random sizes. Make a few ones bigger than others. Okay, and with the eraser, delete the ones that you don't like. Okay, now once you're done with this, let's name this layer Fireflies. Let's go into the layer styles. And here we're gonna add some outer glow. We're gonna use a color like this. I'm gonna use color dodge just to see how it looks like. Now the reason why you're not seeing anything is because I have the range way too high. I'm gonna drop that. Okay, now we're starting to see something. Probably use screen. I think, yeah, it's gonna look a lot better. If the effect is too strong, use a darker tone. You already know that. And something like that. That's the first glow, and with the drop shadow, I'm gonna add a second glow with a different color, probably yellowish, like that, but a lot darker. It's too strong. Let me just use color dodge and see how it looks like, because the screen is kind of too strong. Yeah, I think this one looks better, actually. Let me decrease the spread and the size as well. Just play with the layer styles here and just get some outer glows. Okay, I'm gonna leave them like that. I think they look good enough. Maybe that outer glow, I want to have it a little more visible. Probably the screen was okay. So I'm gonna use this greenish color on them and have something like that. Now, I think I have too many of them, so I'm gonna get the eraser and get rid of some of them. I don't want to have too many. The good thing about this is that after you have the style, you can get the brush and just start painting as many as you want, wherever you want. If you have too many on one place, just delete them and paint with the brush somewhere else. I think that looks good enough. Let me that outer glow, make it just a bit more visible. Not that much. Maybe there, it's okay. Okay, now we have the fireflies. The next thing you want to do is add some lights. Create a new layer and name it lights. And I'm gonna put this on, let's try overlay. I don't even remember the blend mode that I used, but I think overlay or soft light would work. And I'm gonna get a yellowish tone like this. I'm gonna drop the opacity of the brush to about 30 and the flow to 50. That way I can build up the effect however I want. And I want to paint the first light only on the girl. So I have to look for the girl there, control click it. That way I can select the edges. Again, press Command H or Control H on Windows to get rid of the marching end so we can see what we're doing. And start painting. Now, not looking good. This blend mode is not looking good, so let me try color dodge. My beloved color dodge blend mode. I really like it to create light effects. I have lots of tutorials showing you how to use this blend mode. It looks good, but the hardness is too high and the opacity is too high as well, 20 and flow 30. Let's do it again. Still kind of too high. Yeah, I know why, because I have to activate my transfer. So activate transfer. If you don't have transfer, just lower it really to about 10 and flow 20. So I have the pen pressure on. Now I can safely paint this. And that's it. You can do the same on the moon. I press Control Command D to deselect and just a couple of clicks there to create a glow like that. Now I'm gonna leave it like that and move on and make the final effects. The first thing I want to do is create a new layer and press Shift Option Command E or Shift Alt Control E if you're on Windows. And I'm gonna select all the layers, group them with Control G. I'm gonna name this manipulation or manip for manipulation and deactivate that group. Now Photoshop is gonna run a little smoother for me. And I'm gonna add some adjustments here and then use Camera Raw to make the final effect. Now I'm not gonna use the same adjustments as I used on the original. You can head over to this PSD file and see the ones that I used, but I'm gonna use something else. I'm gonna use a color lookup because I already used them. I'm gonna use the crisp winter. So crisp winter, I think I like this. It's gonna give this bluish tone and a little more contrast. And then a solid color. And I'm gonna set this to exclusion. It's a technique that I've been using a lot in my tutorials. I'm gonna use a red tone like that. This will gonna add more red on the shadows. Something really dark, as you can see here. Like that, and click OK. And now I'm going to create a new layer. And now I'm going to merge everything again. Shift Alt Command E. And I'm going to go to Filter and choose Camera Raw. And from here you can add the final effects. The first thing I want to do is add more vignetting with a lot of feather. Maybe something like that. Maybe add a gradient on the bottom, really soft one. And I'm gonna reset local correction settings and just drop the exposure slightly. Or actually, instead of dropping the exposure, maybe I'm gonna drop the shadows only and increase the highlights like that. And with this other, you can create with a circular filter, you can add more glow on the moon or make this thing a little warmer, probably increase the clarity on the moon and decrease the dehaze. And now you can choose a color for that dehaze, something like so. And probably on the girl I would create another one with different settings, of course, so you have to reset local correction settings. That's why I like Camera Raw so much. I can increase the clarity here on the girl, probably increase the saturation maybe, and I'm gonna leave it like that. I think the highlights are too bright. I don't like the light here on her face, but anyways, that's a problem that I should have fixed in Photoshop before coming here to Camera Raw. But anyways, and now let's go back to the overall image, probably increase the clarity on the whole thing. And what else? Here on the split toning, I can change the whole thing. I do want some more vignetting. And this yellow, I think it's too yellow. So I'm gonna go to HSL, look for saturation, and I'm gonna drop the yellows a little bit and also the oranges. And increase the luminance on both. And on the calibration, let's see what we can do. We're gonna affect the reds too much there. Yeah, not looking bad. I'm gonna leave it like that and click OK. Now let me show the before and after. Before camera raw and after. So I really love camera raw for making the final effects, okay? Great, now that's all. That's how I created this manipulation, really quick. You can of course spend more time, add more details. You can add a lamp here maybe, or something flying around here. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, like always, post them on my YouTube channel or on my website. As always, thanks so much for supporting my channel, and I hope to see you on my next tutorial.